Okay, video reflection one on sharing emotional stories last week, one-on-one. Um, how did you feel about sharing your story? I was definitely nervous at first. I mean, we're essentially strangers to each other. Me and the partner that I shared stories with. So, I mean, there's going to be some nerves there no matter what. But then, specifically, the nature of the stories that we shared with each other, the story that I was going to share was personal. And, there's some uncertainty about sharing that information and how the other person's going to feel when they hear that, if they're going to be uncomfortable by it. But then I ended up feeling, as I was talking, I ended up feeling surprisingly comfortable, actually. I easily shared all the details that I had thought of ahead of time. And I think he was pretty receptive of it. How did you feel listening to another person's story? Actually, I was a little bit less comfortable, at least at first, than sharing my story myself. I think for me, I always feel a little bit of pressure to look like I'm listening super intently, whether I truly was or not, to display my interest in what they're saying. Although he did share an interesting story, definitely, I'd say. I was surprised by some of their views that they had. And it made me feel like I could relate to them a little bit more, because I'd say I shared those views for the most part, especially when most people probably would not have. I think I'm an okay listener. Sometimes I just have lots of other stuff on my mind that is difficult to ignore, pressing things or semi-urgent things. Still, when I'm talking with somebody one-on-one, I consciously try to keep myself focused and present. So I could improve on that, being more consistent with it, but I think I could improve as a listener by like taking on the perspective of the person who's speaking to me a little bit more, and thinking how it would feel to share that story or whatever they're talking about myself. Also, I think just like asking more questions of the person who's speaking to me, prompting more questions and more conversation about it, whether I truly am interested in the answers to those questions or not. At the very least, they might lead to more interesting conversation that I benefit from in some way. So, future professions. I think that with just about any profession, the ability to share and receive emotional content is going to be very important, unless you work completely remotely and like your communication doesn't go beyond like emailing. But specifically in the field of urban environmental studies, it deals with urban issues and environmental problems a lot, which are in themselves it can be very emotional. Could be dealing with groups of people who are hungry, homeless, struggling to have proper health care, and security and safety in other ways. So issues like that are emotional for the people that are affected by them, and then for people who are working to solve those those problems, because they have to listen to and share those stories of those people, and similar themes on the environmental side of things, where ecosystems are declining and there are species facing extinction, and individual animals that are suffering in different ways, could be getting killed, and forced to live in unnatural ways because of these increasing environmental issues. So trying to communicate that information, especially as somebody who would be in the future working to solve those problems, you need to understand the emotional side of things, especially when you're trying to convince like policymakers or the general public that certain actions need to be taken. So emotional communication is a good thing for me to have some practice with, and to be thinking about more.